Hey guys, I'm Elise Randolph, joined by moderator for the Alliance 114 first weekend. We've got Lumpy versus Rabble Alliance. Lumpy bringing a pretty finesse-based team of double Sleipnir, double Orthros, double Jackdaw, double Blackbird carries team. And moderator, tell us about this Rabble Alliance setup.
Yeah, Rebel Alliance is going for a pair of rattlesnakes, a basilisk, and onyx, 2 storks for the lynx, 2 spiples for some screen, and 2 hounds in terms of bombers.
Nice. The match will start in 1 minute, so we've got a little bit of time to talk about the setups. They both warped in at 50 kilometers, and their teams are about 80 kilometers away from each other because they warped in at a bit of an angle. So probably pretty happy for both teams. With these finesse teams that Lumpy has, when you warp in at range, you get a lot of time to maneuver around and make some decisions. If you warp in at 0, you sometimes get put under the gun a bit. So what do you think is something we should watch out here for in this match? Like what's an important linchpin ship that's gonna need to be flown really well?
Well, I think most of Lumpy's setup actually needs to be flown really well. Their Sleipnirs are going to be looking to try to snipe any sort of a target that's not keeping transversal. And the Orthoses are going to be putting on constant damage to frigates. I want to see how Lumpy is able to keep at range from Rabble, and they've got a setup that's close to my heart.
Yeah, this Lumpy setup is really fun to watch if it's executed really well. It looks super easy to do. You're just like, oh, lock a guy and he explodes. But you have to be really good at piloting, so it's an incredibly high finesse team. A very high skill cap. And this carries is there we go.
Already Lumpy's playing it correctly. Their already Sleipnirs are not at speed as of yet. They just headshot one of the hounds, and then their scimitars pulling back, and they've got a defensive screen set up by their Jackdaws already and the Orthroses. They've already killed another hound. Lumpy are playing this textbook. You can see the control bar is nearly maxed out.
Yeah, and that's something that we haven't really talked about too much. The control bars that you see on the screen there, the size of them represents how much control they have, and the green filled in part is how much they're optimizing and using. You can see Lumpy is using almost all of their control, and that's a swivel that goes down, just headshot. These tanky swivels just going down. Part of the reason this happens is because Rabble Alliance's Basilisk is damped by this Lumpy carries, although the carries doesn't get to use scripts in his damps, and another swivel dies. Good stuff. Although the carries can't use scripts, it's still pretty effective because it's a bonus damps.
Well, it might not seem initially like it would be. The Orthroses and the Jackdaws are actually both really part of the alpha comp. When you combine the light missile damage and you time it with an artillery strike, you can nearly one-shot almost any sort of a destroyer or below.
And the beauty part about the Orthros is that they get super fast missiles. So it's not like you have a lot of waiting to do if you were taking something like a Serb or a Caracal Navy issue, which we saw earlier today. Yeah, and we can see a little bit of a hard time bumping through the Storks. Storks are really tanky ships, and we can see a bit of the limitation of the alpha here. But part of that is the Sleipnirs aren't in great range right now, so they're just kind of maneuvering around to stay alive. Because although it looks really dominant right now, they are by no means won yet. Lumpy are still in it, or Rabble are still in it. They could still be scrappy.
We can see that Zintage in his Rattlesnake and the Onyx are already starting to push in, and this Sleipnir of Arnord, you can see him snaking around. He has to be careful to make sure he doesn't get caught by the Onyx, but he's playing it well enough to be able to track at the same time as Bellum Bay and his Stork goes down. And with that, there'll be half the links for Rabble off the bat down.
Yep, I'm really surprised that Rabble aren't going for these Blackbirds. I know oftentimes they seem to be kind of baity ships, but these Blackbirds, like the Rattlesnakes, don't need a lock to get their drones on the Blackbird. Like you figure they would be doing a little bit of damage, and by now these Blackbirds are so far away and at range. I don't think there's. Oh, they caught an Orthros though, and Orthros has been caught, and you can see like the finesse required in here because once this Orthros is caught, he melts.
Yeah, the Onyx caught him with the Hexgram, and with that, the battleships were then able to close to range and get the grapplers on him. And with that kind of damage
what a play that almost happened! What a play! Yeah. The entire Lumpy team converged onto the Onyx, blew him up instantly. The Orthros on Lumpy almost survived, but not quite.
Yeah, and now it looks like they're putting all their light missile damage onto the Basilisk, and eventually he's just going to run out of charges on his ancillary shield booster, and he will go down eventually. You can see that jams are being spread appropriately across the board. Everything is at least being tried to be jammed right now.
Yeah, if you look at the little jam icon next to the ship, that doesn't mean a successful jam. That just means a jam attempt. And you can see that Lumpy is applying almost all of their control bar right now, so it's really, really good piloting right there. It's easy to screw up and put 2 jams on one target and leave one guy unjammed. And typically, rattlesnakes are immune to jams because they can assign their drones to other targets and have them assist. But when everyone's jammed, you can't really do that.
And slowly but surely, they're working apart at the Basilisk and the Stork. The Basilisk has used about over half of its ASB charges and a couple more, and he's eventually going to start bleeding armor.
Yep, so the ancillary shield booster does have 9 charges when you use Navy Cap boosters, so if you want to count along with us, you can see as he boosted the 9th time, and now he's just going down, and he's no long for this world, and he explodes. He survived a little bit quicker than PL Zatanna, I'll give him credit for that. But Lumpy, just real textbook right here. Like, this is an amazingly hard setup to fly, and they made it look so simple. Just losing one Orthrus, they'll probably be a little bit mad about that. But, I mean, losing one ship is not the end of the world at all. Not even a bad thing.
Yeah, and losing it because you got Hixgrams, so being able to stay at 40 kilometers or greater from everything at all times is not an easy task while being able to apply your damage correctly. So well played.
Yeah, that's a big change that happened this year. Is the Hick is basically a 37-kilometer scram, which is not something kiting finesse teams are really have to deal with generally. And so an Onyx just kind of ran. When an Onyx is running at you and puts your 37-kilometer scram on you, you kind of get bamboozled a bit.
Yeah, now with the Stork down, the Lynx are off the field, so with that, Lumpy is just going to work through the shield HP of these Rattlesnakes, and then they're just going to close it out. I mean, absolutely textbook play. As I was saying earlier, this is a setup that's close to my heart, similar to something that Camel Empire brought in the early stages of Alliance Tournament 13.
Yeah, absolutely, and they had a lot of success with that as well, and it was great because when these really high caliber teams bring these setups that look simple to fly, you see other teams just copy it and try to get good at it. Little do they realize that these high caliber teams have practiced with that setup for months, and they know the ins and outs perfectly of it. And it's not as easy as it looks to fly these high finesse teams. But Lumpy is definitely making it look pretty easy. They're not just orbiting and hitting F1 as they're wont to do sometimes on TQ.
Yeah, Yissus in his Blackbird was slacking a little bit, managed to get grapple on him, but he's now keeping range, and these Rattlesnakes are being jammed, they're being damped, and yeah, really excellent play across the board on Lumpy.
Yep, it's taking some time, but that's because the setup doesn't have a whole lot of DPS. It just has a lot of high alpha, and these Orthruses take a little bit of time to reload as well. But this Rattlesnake will go down, and man, if you're this Rattlesnake pilot right now, how do you think you feel? You can't do anything. You're jammed. You're damned. So even when you lose a jam, you can't lock anything.
You know, you're a little bit disappointed, right? You know.
You think you're rustled? You think you're rustled if you're this Rattlesnake
you
pilot?
know. Look, you know you've lost a shadow duel against Yugi, and you're gonna get sent to the Shadow Realm. So it's
All right, I have no idea what that is, but it sounds hip and fly, and all the young kids probably get that reference. Oh, good
so
Lord,
if
that's
you're
hilarious.
either Test or NC Dot, how do you feel watching this match? As I'm sure they are.
I think you're afraid of Lumpy, and I think you ban the Sleipnir, honestly, and I think that's a smart thing to do. Either that, or just ban a Scimitar and hope they don't bring in a Tana. I think that's definitely the play when you're fighting against these teams, because the Basilisk isn't really conducive to this style of fighting because it's a little bit too slow. So if you just ban out the Scimitar, it forces you to bring an armor comp, but it also forces them to bring an armor comp. Obviously, a team like Lumpy will know how to adapt to this, but that's probably the best way to get out of seeing this particular setup.
What's also important, though, is that it forces a set of bans, right? And it forces a set of strategies to come up against that, because now that you know that your opponent can bring a finesse team and not just bring it, but execute it nearly perfectly, it means that you have to account for that in any sort of a setup that you bring, which makes your already difficult life even that much more challenging. And it looks like
I
this
would have gone
Rattlesnake
with
is actually
difficulter,
burning.
which is probably a good word.
Difficulter. It looks like this Rattlesnake's actually burning for the edge of glory.
He made it. He made it to the edge of glory and exploded. Good job. That was a good catch. I definitely missed it, and congrats to Lumpy. They fly a really hard to fly setup, and they make it look so easy. Rabble
I,
will be dropping down to the elimination bracket, and
I can't
we'll
wait to
see
see
them
what
later.
the commentators have to say about this at the analyst desk.
Yeah, we'll throw it back to the studio and see what they say.